So yeah, thank you all for coming along this morning. We know time is very precious, so we really appreciate it. So we're going to go through today embedding impact into your research grant applications. So we've done this as a bit of a joint enterprise between research office crew and the big development crew. So we've got all our lovely photos up here, just in case there's any doubt who we are. So I'm Jane Rowe, Research Impact Manager aligned with Face and Optic, and we've got Dr. Emma Harrison with us today as well, Research Impact Manager for SALS and Civic Mission. We've got Emma and Rachel, Development Managers. Ta-da! So I'm going to be going. Oh, sorry, I've skipped a bit, haven't I? So we're going to go through some bits today. Emma and I have done the work on sort of what is impact as a starter for 10, and then Emma T and Rachel are going to go through how to embed that into your grant applications, because that's part of the bread and butter of your work, isn't it? Is your grant application support. We are recording the session today with some technical issues, but we'll disregard those. We'll record it by Panopto, and so anything that we capture in terms of the audience, we will try and edit out, but if you've got any concerns, just grab one of us before the end and we'll do what we can. So, why are we here today? Because research funders nowadays are looking at how the proposed research not only enhances the research within the actual field, but how it will also benefit the wider world, so how it benefits outside academia, basically. So we want to help you do two main things out of today's session. We want to help you identify the impact vision for your project proposal, and then we want to help you communicate that in the applications. So today, I'm going to run through what is research impact. Now, I've got a 10-minute slot, so I'm not going to be able to cover the entirety of what is research impact. So I guess a little plea from me is that I'm going to do a bit of an introduction that Emma and I have worked on, give you a bit of a flavour, but we are always around. We want to work with the researchers, we want to work with the teams, so make use of us. We'd like to come along to team meetings and just really get involved in that research journey and the impact that's coming out of your research. So we'll do a little flavour today, but don't let this be the end of the journey, is the plea. And then Rachel, you're going to have a look at how to embed impact into your funding grants, aren't you? What the actual process is. And then we're going to do a short exercise with Emma T, and we're going to have a look at some of the resource and the tools that can help you do that process as well. So we will start with the $1 million question. What is research impact? So there's many definitions out there, and I'm sure in your research journey you've come across quite a few. One of the ones that we utilise is the UKRI one that says that research is the demonstrable contribution that excellent research makes to society and the economy. We are sharing the slides as well. Like I said, I'm furiously writing, but we are sharing the slides afterwards if it saves you your fingers. What Emma and I kind of try and say to package that up quite neatly is that it's actually the measurable benefits of research that it has outside of academia to either society, the economy, or the environment, or a mixture of each of those. So with that definition in mind, hello! Sorry I'm late. It's okay. With that definition in mind, has anyone from their research got any tangible examples of what impact is that they've experienced and they've generated previously? Everyone's like, don't look at me. Go on. Excellent.
It's a bit easier for me because I worked in speech and language therapy research, so I'm a speech and language therapist by background. So it's like the impact on clinical populations. So often we talk about kind of maybe what we're researching will aid better, more accurate assessment of speech disorders, for example, which will help us to give them better therapy. And then what we look at basically is to demonstrate how big an impact that the actual speech disorders can be on people. We look at like kind of a worst case scenario. So there's evidence that suggests that people with speech disorders have significant psychosocial impact, that they can often end up having involvement with the criminal justice system, et cetera, et cetera. And so if we can remediate the problem earlier or more accurately assess, then the impact is going to be that, it will reduce all those factors.
That preventative measure. It's almost like it's under the health umbrella, and it's those diagnostic tools that are then having an impact into the journey and the end user. Excellent. We've got any other examples? So one, I'm sure you've all heard of, but I will explain just in case. We take part in the Research Excellence Framework. So the last one was in 2021, and the next one is in 2029, which sounds like it's ages away, and it's really not. We've already commenced the work to do with that, and it will be here in a heartbeat because we're already in November, and I'm not sure how. The years just fly by. So one of the, as part of that, Emma and I, we do case studies that look at the impact that research have had from our own researchers across the university. So one that was submitted in 2021 were some researchers at the university that won a tender to use contribution analysis methodology to review the Welsh Government's policy and its implementation on alcohol and other drugs. So 3 tangible impacts that came out of that review were it had a substantive contribution to the framing of the consultation document, i.e. it helped inform policy. The CA methodology was subsequently adopted by Welsh Government for the evaluation of the minimum pricing of alcohol policy. And it also contributed to the establishment of a Welsh Centre for Alcohol and Other Drugs, where service users are the key advocacy. So you can see there's 3 tangible elements there of impact that have come out of the research that was undertaken. I think that links in with what you're saying, doesn't it, Thomas, about the umbrella and then what impact it's going to have down the line and how you can actually measure that. So thinking about if you're starting out a bid, and I don't want to step on your toes, but if you're starting out to complete your application form for some funding, you've got your research idea, you're trying to source some funding to do with that. What do those, we try and say to have an impact vision for your research. Where's your impact goal and what you're trying to achieve? So they could come under any of the umbrellas that we've said. So we've got health, environment, economy, and society. So some of the examples that we've got within health, which I think is your area, Thomas, we were just talking about, the introduction of diagnostic tools or treatments for patients. So one of the examples from research across the university is a vision that's supporting some current research is the identification of novel blood markers and neurine-based biomarkers for the detection of recurrent blood cancer. So it's understanding what it is that you're trying to achieve from that research that's beyond the academia. Environmental impact and examples could be the development of new technologies that reduce energy consumption. So for example, you may have encountered that we've got some research going on for novel rim-driven fans that helps generate high-speed electrical powered flights. So that's reducing that fuel consumption and helping towards net zero. It could be the economy, so the new processes or technologies within the industries that drive profitability, easy for me to say. For example, there's some research going on across the university about designing and linking food systems, the farm to fork label within the Welsh food circular economy and how that can support profitability. And then we've got societal impacts, so the implementation of public policy to protect and enhance the public welfare. So for example, the introduction of the minimum unit pricing of alcohol, which is the example that we just touched on before. So it's about really thinking, what's my area of research, what's the impact that it's going to have, and what's the key message that's beyond academia that I'm trying to get across to those funders. We often talk a lot about what research is, but we often encounter examples of what research isn't. So we just wanted to touch on that. So getting attention, getting your research noticed on public platforms or social medias, getting your work retweeted, presenting your work at high prestige conferences, contributing to exhibitions or getting published in a book. We often see examples of research saying to us, we've had impact because I've had a chapter published in a book. And we really commend that, we support that, we celebrate that in any way that we can, we encourage it. But that isn't actual impact, that's a pathway to the impact, that's getting your work noticed. We've got a lot of resources on both the front-facing website and the intranet as well. So we'll guide you to those at the links that will come out in these slides about the various pathways and dissemination and then actually what that difference is to actual impact. So I guess we just wanted to frame it in that way to have in your mind that those pathways are separate to the actual end user impact. So a good way for us to demonstrate that, and I've got a trusty prop, I'm not sure you'll all be able to see it, you might need to put your glasses on. So Professor Mark Reed, who's a researcher in his field, but he also does a lot of work about impact and sharing that amongst researchers, because obviously we're answerable to the spends of the public purse. You know, we get measured on this on a year, however many years it is, 7 or 6 years. So Professor Mark Reed has got a metaphor where he says, imagine that your research is the flame on a candle. So you've done your research and you're going to start showing people that flame. If they do nothing from that flame, that's part of your dissemination. So this is your book chapters, this is your going to your conferences, you're showing everyone your flame. If they do nothing but look at that flame, it's going to die out at some point. The metaphor he uses is if somebody comes and lights their candle from your flame, your research that you're showing them, that's some tangible, measurable impact. So thinking back to the minimum unit alcohol pricing, there was 3 examples, wasn't there? It's informed policy, it's helped with a research centre. Somebody's come and lit those candles, and then it's kept it burning, it's kept it going on, because even how many years later now, that project is still ongoing, isn't it? And that work's still ongoing. So it's keeping that flame alive, I guess, is the metaphor that sticks nicely in my mind. A couple of key points that we always try to point out is that impact occurs post-research. So whilst we're saying start it from the very inception of your research idea, start planning, have a clear pathway, get your support, get your invested parties, which we'll come on to a little bit when we're talking with Emma and Rachel. But the actual evidence is post your actual research. It's once you've started showing that candle to everybody. You need to identify the intended impact at the funding grant application stage, and you need to understand how you're going to measure that and demonstrate it. So linking back in with that REF exercise, we need to be able to say, this is the research that was done, this is the impact that was had, these are the measures, and this is the evidence. So it's starting, planning, and considering all of that from the start of the journey. And it's over to Rachel.
Thank you,
Down
Darlene.
for the next slide.
Hi, so I'm Rachel. I am one of the development managers in the university. We work with everybody, no matter what the department, to help you develop project ideas, to develop funding bids, and to take it through to submission stage. What I'm going to try to do now is put what Jane's been talking about sort of into context in terms of an actual funding application. You need to be able to demonstrate that your research is going to have an impact. If you think about it, funders could invest thousands, millions of pounds in your research. They're not just going to want to have something sitting on a shelf as a result of that money. They want to see real tangible outcomes as a result of that research. So that's what we're trying to get you to think about before you even start your research, before you start your application form, okay? So I've put together a 10-point plan. Everybody likes a bit of a plan, something that you can take away with you, something that hopefully you can use in the future. And I'll talk around each one. I do have notes that you can have copies of afterwards, so don't worry about writing too much down if you want to listen. Go the other way. So first of all, define the type of impact you're going to have. So Jane's already spoken about these. You'll notice at the bottom there, I have put academic impact. Now, you do need to make impact outside of academic circles, but some impact does lead to advancing knowledge or potential to influence future research. So there is some impact there. Sometimes it will be more on a pathway to impact. Some of it may potentially be impact itself. So I think academic impact is more about the impact, is more about the pathway towards impact. So societal impact, benefits to specific communities. So I've done a lot of work with academics who work in the third sector, and their research has had quite a big impact on the way that charities work with their clients in the community to change the way that things are done, especially in the climate of ever decreasing funding available. They've had to change the way they work in order to be able to have the same impact with their society, the communities that they work with. Economic impact, job creation, potential for commercialisation, which is a whole other thing that we're not talking about today, but commercialisation from research is a big part of what universities should be doing. So economic impact, really crucial. Funders do like economic impact. They like to see they're getting like £10 back for every pound that they've invested in you, for example. Okay, so again, won't go into it in huge detail here because we're giving you an overview, but it's something that we can discuss further with you if need be. Environmental impact, obviously, things to do with sustainability, having a positive impact on the climate, all that side of things is becoming increasingly important. So where does your impact lie? It doesn't lie within one of those. Everything lies within one of those if you think slightly outside the box. For example, your health will lie from primarily in societal, but also economic and probably environmental as well. So all sorts of areas there. Number 2, align with a funder's priorities. Okay, so you might see a funding call come out and you've got a piece of research ready to go and you think, yeah, that kind of vaguely fits. I'll make it fit. It'll work. What the funders really want is you to show that you understand what their priorities are. So they are not going to fund something that is vaguely aligned to what their organisational interests are, okay? So it may mean that you need to think about your research with a slightly different lens, not change the research. If it has to change too much, it's the wrong fund. But if you can't demonstrate to the funders that you understand what it is that they're interested in, they're not going to give you the money. Simple as that. So think about that. Look at their goals, their priorities, and align your project's impact with those goals and priorities. Okay? That's going to make them think, if they're a philanthropic organisation, they're going to say, they understand what we're trying to do. I really like that idea and something I haven't thought of. I'm going to fund them. Okay, so make sure that you go on their website, look at their goals, look at their priorities, look at their mission statements. Does it align with them? Then you're going to articulate the pathways to impact. Okay, so short-term outcomes, you're going to be thinking about immediate outcomes. So this is things like your publications, like your presentations, like going to talk to people in the community and spreading that knowledge. It's not impact, but it's a short-term pathway towards impact, okay? You're taking that candle out and you're showing it to people. Medium-term outputs include development of new tools, resources, new practices. Again, not completely impact yet, getting there, a bit further on. So what you need to do is take those tools, take them and put them into practice, and once they're in practice and you can measure that impact as a result of those tools, that's where your impact is. Okay? So you have to think short, medium term, how am I going to get to the point of impact? In a funding application, you need to show that progression. So very straightforward, step by step, going to do this, A, B, C, boom, that's when the impact will occur. Okay? The next number 4 is engage with interested parties. You'll still hear people use the word stakeholders. We're trying to move away from the word stakeholders. It's no longer acceptable because it's to do with when we took land away from Indigenous people. Pretty much. Emma's going to do an exercise on this, so I'm not going to talk too much about this, except working with stakeholders or with interested parties is a way to maximise your impact. So if you already work with, for instance, the local council or with a local charity or with an industry expert, if you work with them, they're going to contribute to and benefit from your research. So a lot of that work towards impact will be done if you engage really effectively with interested parties. Without that, you're going to have a lot more work to do once your research is finished because you then need to take that message out and it's a much, much longer process. Do it at the beginning, get them involved, your research will be better, they will contribute to your research, and then they will benefit from it, and that will show impact much more effectively and quickly. An example of that is we will collaborate with local schools and education policymakers to ensure our research on learning methods informs future curriculum development. Okay, so if you're already working with a school to try out, test your research and to test your thesis, if it works, if you're already working with a school and local authority, they can then quickly take that on board and spread it throughout the county and then roll on from there. Okay. Include knowledge dissemination strategies beyond academic publication. So knowledge dissemination is important because you're taking that candle, you lit the candle, and you want to take it to as many people as possible. Okay, so this here candle, great, I love my candle, I want to keep it to myself. You have to take it out to lots and lots of different places, and hopefully other people will like that candle from you. So within your funding bid, demonstrate what you're going to do to share that knowledge. Okay, so it's going to be media, workshops, policy briefs, developing toolkits, all that sort of stuff that isn't directly impact, but it's knowledge dissemination. All right, so you need to think about that, get a plan together for how are you going to do that, because that is your pathway to impact. Okay, it shows that you've thought about it logically and that you're not just kind of doing research for the sake of it. You know why you're doing research, how you're going to get it out there, and how it's going to impact people in the future. Include an evaluation and monitoring of impact. We don't always put this in a bid, but it's actually quite a good idea to do that. So you need to think about how are you going to measure the success of your impact. Okay, so you've developed a toolkit and you're going to spread it out across the schools. Great, job done. Actually, no, you need to think about how am I going to demonstrate to the funder that that £1 million that they gave me has actually resulted in 15,000 children being better at maths. Okay, you need to think about that at the funding stage. How are you going to do that? Demonstrate to the funders that you've thought about that, but it's not just going to sit on a shelf gathering dust, because that's no use to anybody. To be brutal, there's a lot of dissertations, there's a lot of theses that sit on the shelves here, never to be read again. Well, it wasn't what was the point, but you get my idea. It's just kind of like, if it's not outside of academia, is it changing anything? So have your evaluation and monitoring of impact, at least have an idea of how you're going to do that if it's not an actual plan, but you need to think about how you're going to do that. Consider long-term sustainability. That's the candle again. Okay, how many candles are you going to light as a result of this impact? You need to think about how is it going to continue to generate benefits once you've taken it out there, once you've unleashed your research into the world. How is it going to still be having an impact 10 years down the line? So that £1 million investment that those funders have made, you've got a 3-year impact, and then 10 years down the line, they're still seeing impact as a result of your work. That £1 million suddenly seems like really good value for money. That's what's going to get you the difference between being chosen and not being chosen. It's like, yeah, actually, I can see that this is really going to change stuff. 20 years down the line, that money is still going to be having an impact on society, making a positive difference. It's quite difficult to know that, but again, think about it, and if you can at least show that you've given some consideration to that sustainability, then that's going to be a really positive in the scoring of the bids. Highlight economic and policy implications. Increasingly, in this world of ours, we have to demonstrate economic and policy implications in order to justify the research that we do. They don't want to research a piece of work necessarily that is just about knowledge for knowledge's sake anymore. It's very sad, we should do. But the world that we live in, when you're looking at funding, they're looking at economic and policy implications, okay? There are exceptions, obviously. There are funders who are still believe in knowledge for knowledge's sake, but the majority of funders now want you to consider and highlight the economic and policy implications. Things like innovation, commercialisation, job creation, policy, evidence-based recommendations, that kind of thing. So there's something tangible you can take away and use. Needs to go into the funding bit. I think quite often researchers sort of get very interested in their own area, and they get immersed in it, and they specialise in a very specialised area, and they understand the benefit of it, but don't necessarily explain it and how it can be used. That's what has to be really, really crystal clear in any funding bid that you do. Okay, and if it is not there, the four of us will be after you saying, we don't know what's it for. I don't know what it's for. Tell me, what is it for? Simple as that. Develop an impact-focused budget. Okay, it's not always possible. The budget lines in bids sometimes are very prescriptive, but if you can demonstrate how, in budget lines, public outreach, stakeholder engagement, interested party engagement, workshops, dissemination materials, pathways to that ultimate impact that we're looking for. You're going to need money to do that. So put it in the budget. They'll look at the budget and think, oh yeah, they've thought this through. They know how much they're going to need for that. Okay. So again, Emma and I will help with the budgeting side of things, and we'll help you to say, great, how are you going to get it out there? Workshops cost money, dissemination costs money, conferences cost money, pathways towards that ultimate impact that you're looking for. Number 10, provide case studies or examples of previous impact. Not always easy, but if you're in a team that has done research before, for example, in your speech and language therapy, if you've got examples of tangible impact that you can demonstrate that links to what you're doing, put it in. It makes you look like a safe pair of hands. Funders love a safe pair of hands. What they don't like is taking a punt, especially if it's quite a large amount of money, okay? So if you haven't got any previous impact to demonstrate, think about previous research that you've done, previous publications that you've done. If you haven't got any of those, then come and talk to us. We need to think about the level of funding that you go for. So where you can demonstrate previous impact, you can look at higher levels of funding because funders are going to have more confidence. If you've got previous publications, maybe slightly lower level of funding, but still happy. If you're very early career researchers, we need to build you up or work with other universities who have got that level of interest. So partnerships is really important there. We can't underestimate how important it is for you to make those networks, go and talk to other people in other universities who do have that experience, work with them, and then you can begin to get that experience yourselves and build up from there. So it's really important that you develop those networks, those research networks, use them effectively, work together, put in joint bids. Okay? And I think, yes. So in summary, before you embark on a funding bid, ask yourself, can I articulate the potential impact of my research project, demonstrate its alignment with the funder's priorities, and provide a plan for achieving and sustaining impact? Achieving impact is one thing, sustaining it is another thing. Projects last for 5 years and they have an impact for those beneficiaries. Taking it beyond those 5 years is another matter altogether. If the answer is no, question yourself, is this the right piece of research to undertake, or is this the right funder to apply to? Come and talk to us. Obviously, we might be able to help you find ways to make it appropriate or to find alternative funders for you.
plug your drop-in sessions.
Hmm?
Plug your drop-in sessions.
Oh yes, every Tuesday currently, Emma and I and one of the research team are in the gallery from 11 o'clock to 2 p.m. Changing to 1 p.m.
Changing to reception.
And changing. Okay, I'd have been in the wrong place.
Find us, it's a game.
Where's Rachel? Yeah. So yeah, sorry. Reception 11 till 1. Yeah. Reception 11 on a Tuesday. Is that immediate?
We can make it immediate.
We can make it immediate. Yeah. So come and find us. Even if you've just got a germ of an idea, come talk to us. We can help you formulate that, develop it, and take you through the entire process. So you're not on your own, because it's a scary prospect, but it's not rocket science. It's a logical process. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Emma, who's going to take you through one of those processes now.
Thank you. Right, okay, so building on what Rachel and Jane have already introduced, there's not really one magic answer to say how you do this in the proposals and in the research. It's a logical process of almost deconstructing what your idea is and what are you doing and why are you doing what you're doing. And I think what's important to mention is obviously each funding call will be quite different. It might be that you're developing an idea before you've identified the funding stream, so the way that you embed your impact is perhaps a bit more organic. If you're responding to a tender or a call, it might already be quite prescriptive on what you've got to do and how you've got to do it. So, you know, it is important to listen to these obviously all these options. It might be that you can't do every single one of them, but if it helps you when you are developing your research ideas and try and embed as much of this as possible, then it will lead to your bid being a lot stronger. So this is a bit of a checklist. So I'm not going to go through each of these points. This is an example of some of the tools that we're going to give you after this session. And it is a literal checklist. So I would say if you, next time you're starting a research project or you've got an idea, get the checklist out, start looking through it, and ask it. It's almost questioning yourself, being a little bit objective, even though you understand your research, trying to answer some of these questions, because by answering these questions, you are evidencing why you are doing what you're doing and who's going to benefit from it. So I've got a couple of pages here. This list is broken down in kind of different parts of how a bid would be structured. So initially, you can expect to see some sort of, usually it's a similar format, you can expect to have to do a bit of a setting the scene, a bit of a summary, a bit of an evidence of demand. That's usually how any funding, whether it is a tender, whether it's a funding call that's coming from the Research Council or some sort of speculative bid, the format in the same way as there's a format to pieces of academic work that you ask your students to submit, there is a format to this, and usually it starts with setting the scene. So this part of the checklist is going through some of the sort of key points. I'd say if you can tick these boxes when you're laying out that story as to why you're even embarking on this, you're already on the right track to evidencing why it's needed, why is it different, why is it new, identifying quite early on who you're going to be working with. And we use the word interested partners, interesting partners. That can all be slightly different to audiences, but again, it's identifying who all these people are. In each project, you're going to have lots of different people. You're going to have people who are interested in it for different reasons, and it's identifying that. And sometimes that just takes a minute to step back, think about who is going to be interested in this and why. And there's you're kind of mapping already who your interested parties are. And then by entering into conversation with those, you're going to immediately start understanding where some of your impact's going to come from, because you're going to see, actually, these people are interested and this is why. So if you can set this out quite early on in your proposal or in your thinking. Last point on this one is be precise, and I think we're all guilty of this sometimes, and especially when we're dealing with word counts and forms aren't particularly helpful in the layout. get to the point and justify it, explain why. You don't just use sweeping statements, because these bids go to teams of evaluators. The evaluators are usually subject experts, industry experts. Different sections of proposals go to different people as well. So budget holders, quite often, high-level budget holders will only see a summary of the research application. They won't necessarily see every single part of it. So you want to make sure that your message is clear, that it's to the point, that it's direct. You're not nuancing anything. If it's going to benefit a certain group, be clear about that, because what they won't do is use any kind of interpretation. They're very literal when they're marking and evaluating projects. So be really as precise as you possibly can. Second part of the checklist is kind of your project plan, your methodology. So you've set out in the first part what you're going to do and why, and now you're going to put how you're going to do it. So again, there's a few main points here. What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? Use charts, keep things concise but precise. Think of your list of activities, and this hopefully will come from engaging with your interested parties. Which are the high-hitting activities? Which are the things that are really going to lead to impact? There'll be some things on there that the project has to deliver, which might not lead to impact. So it's listing out what are the different activities, what are the work packages within that, what is going to result in impact. So it's being able to just identify that yourself and get that across in your application. Measures of success, Rachel touched upon this. Impact won't necessarily be realised, and it won't be realised within the term of your funding bid. So it's just having that foresight and getting that across in a timeline that you're doing this because, and then being realistic about what you anticipate the impact to be, and if you can put things like timescales, great. This is why discussions with partners is so important, because that is where your impact's going to come from. It's going to be that legacy of your piece of research, why you're doing what you're doing, and it's who's going to do something with that afterwards. Who are those people who've got the candles lit from what you've done? So it's so important to talk to them and try to get to the bottom of that. So the next thing you might see on a proposal, so you've done your summary, you've done your methodology, how are you going to do what you're doing, why? Budgets. Everybody loves a budget, and Rachel and I, we will help you through this process. We'll help you through all of this, so please don't be intimidated. There seems a lot to it, but again, I would recommend with every stage of this, you refer to the funding guidance, if there is some. If you're doing something organically, speculatively, obviously use this as a checklist. If you're responding to a specific call, keep referring to what the funder is requesting, what the context of that is, why are they doing it. So when you get to your budget, and this helps you develop a really sensible budget, because you're looking at the individual costs and justifying it, because sometimes it's quite easy. The funding isn't coming out of our pocket. It's not us that are paying for it. So it's quite easy to just instantly start racking up costs in your budget. I need this, I want this, and I need to pay for that. I think once you start considering the rationale behind each line item, if sometimes being a little bit objective and a little bit critical of who, and even down to the actual staff that are involved. You're paying for these people to be involved in the project. Why are they involved? What are they contributing? If you can justify every single line on that budget, then you're going to be in a lot stronger position. Most bids will have a section where you put the budget in, and then there's an area where they ask for a rationale and justification. So when you're developing it, when you're meeting with us, we will ask you some of these questions. Why is that person involved? Why are you including that cost? Or have you considered this? Quite often, things like Welsh language is essential in the work that we do as a university. So we need to build in appropriate translation costs and anything else to enable that Welsh language translation and activity. So just be realistic. Think about what you need to achieve, the outcomes. How does that represent value for money? It's so competitive now. I think the official statistic is something like 1 in 17 bids is successful. UKRI bids, notoriously oversubscribed. Wales is always underrepresented in terms of the funding that comes to Welsh universities from UKRI. So the stronger you make your case for why they should give their money to you, the better. And any examples of economic cost benefit that you can include in your actual proposal about how it's going to actually potentially generate money or save money will obviously also enhance that value for money kind of calculation. So these are just a few of them. And there's a list there. There's like a whole raft of cost benefits that you can find. So I've just put a few examples. The next thing you might see is governance and team. So usually the next part of a proposal is going to set out who's doing what in the context of the project and how is the project going to be managed. So again, if all of these things have been considered and you're able to quite confidently tick as many as possible, then you're going to have a much stronger application which evidences impact. So yeah, I'm not going to go through each single one, but think quite critically about who's involved in it, who's delivering it with you, why. Quite often we do encourage, especially early career academics, to partner with other organisations, take a small role on another bid. You know, that's a great way if you haven't been involved in leading proposals initially. It's a great way to get experience, and obviously everything that you are involved in, you are named in, you can use as part of your kind of portfolio then, makes you a stronger candidate for future bids. So think about what roles people are doing. Have you got the best team? Think about whether you need stakeholders or lived experienced people, users on the panel or on the project team. Are they funded? Are they not funded? It's all of these things that we need to evidence. Depending on the bid, again, sometimes it asks you then to break down your team structure into skill sets as to why. So things like negotiation, is that required, and who have you got out of your project team that can be a good negotiator, conflict resolution, things like that. So so try and think quite in a little bit more detail than we probably naturally would originally think about who's going to do it. You know, it's like, oh, I know so and so, I work with them, so I'm going to put them on my bid, and that's great. But try and deconstruct it a little bit, unpick it, think a little bit critically about why am I putting this person on? What are they bringing to it? So all of these things help it kind of be a really authentic proposal, and impact is obviously going to come from having the right people doing it in the right roles and having the right kind of influence on your project. Right, impact statements. Sometimes some funders will literally have a section for impact statements, not all of them, so which is important for it to be embedded all the way through. And I would urge you to embed it anyway, but a lot of funders will have a section for impact. Always look at what the funder has put in their guidance, what's required, are the word counts, things like that. Sounds simple, and again, these sections don't always, so each section of a bid doesn't go to one team necessarily. It can be deconstructed when it's being evaluated, and only certain people look at certain sections. So it is important to make sure you're repeating messages in the correct way by answering each particular question specifically. What is request? What's the evaluation criteria for that question? Even if you think, actually, I've already covered this in my methodology, if it's asking you to cover it again, you cover it. You literally have to be very literal with a funding application. Often impact sections are read by non-technical people, so make sure it is legible, it is understandable to somebody who doesn't have the level of technical knowledge that you have. Make it clear, make it concise. There's no harm in asking a friend or family member to have a read. Obviously, we will read it as well, but somebody who has absolutely no idea of academia, of the subject area, ask them to have a read, ask them if they understand it. And obviously, the impact managers are the go-to people, but as a team, we'll all help you with that. So yeah, just some top tips there. Right, we are going to focus on one because it is difficult to do an activity to focus on everything. So we're going to try and look at interested parties. Now, this is Professor Mark Reed, so you've heard him mentioned earlier, and he is a bit of a guru when it comes to impact. He's a very renowned professor in, I think he's at Edinburgh University.
He
And
moved recently.
oh, has he just moved?
Yeah.
Oh, right. So he's very successful, very experienced in winning bids, and he is championing how important it is to evidence and embed impact. So he's got loads of resources actually online, and they're all, most of them are available to watch. There's things, there's like hour-long presentations and all sorts of stuff. This is a short film, I think it's about 6 minutes long, about how to do. Now this is his terminology, stakeholder. So as a university, we're moving away from using that word. So obviously this is his resource, and I see the word. And so we're going to watch a short film, and then we're going to do a little activity in pairs or small groups. We've got a couple of templates, and we just want you to basically probably take a couple of minutes. In fact, I might give you sheets now, watch the film, and then just an activity to try and think about an example of one of your research ideas or a project, if you've got one, or something you've done in the past, something you're hoping to do, and we want you to just try and think of who some of those interested parties are. It's nothing more complicated than that, but there's a few boxes to prompt you. You don't have to put anything in during this exercise. It's just helping you think, well, who's involved and why. And most projects will have quite a few different invested parties, different levels. There could be customers, there could be beneficiaries, it could be a service that's going to benefit because there's going to be cost savings. There could be all sorts of levels. So I will start the video, and then I will come round and hand out the forms. So, what do I press to start the video?
Should be down.
Down.
Da-da-da.
Hello and welcome to the Fast Track Impact vlog. So I'm going to be recording little videos like this every week for the next few weeks until I run out of things to say. We'll see how long this lasts for. The idea is that they're going to be short and sharp. They're going to be focused on unpacking or demystifying key concepts that are really important to understand, practical skills, tools, techniques that you can use to enjoy impact more and do it more time efficiently. Maybe some stuff on evaluation, presenting with impact, a few ideas. We'll see where this goes. Most of them are going to be recorded here in my home office in rural Aberdeenshire, but I may go out and about some weeks or just see what happens. I thought that I'd start this week with one of the underpinning tools that I use on a regular basis to save myself time, and it gets to the heart of what works with impact. And I'm hoping that if you followed my podcast, if you've been on my website, downloaded the guides, if you've maybe read the Research Impact Handbook, that this won't come as a surprise to you, that I'm going to introduce to start with the idea of a public or stakeholder analysis. And I want to boil this down to 3 questions that you have to ask yourself. It is as simple as that, and you can do this incredibly quickly. And it saves you a huge amount of time because now I've got a list of my, say, top 3 stakeholders that I want to reach out to first. Top 3 public representative organisations, groups, whoever. And I'm not just going reactive to whoever knocks on my door, whoever I get recommended to talk to. I'm strategically saying, yeah, if I'm going to focus on anyone first, that's who I'm going to focus on, and this is why. And I can justify this. And now I'm spending 15 minutes per month for the next 3 months sending an email to the first 3 contacts on that list. 3/4 of an hour later, 3 months later, I am significantly closer to to impact. And because I have used stakeholder analysis for doing this, the emails that I've sent have been tailored to their interests And they reply to my emails, and yes, of course, I'll meet up, and this sounds interesting, great, tell me more. And you started your pathway to impact. I will probably run out of time after the third of these. Let's be realistic here, we've got limited time to engage with and generate impact. But I don't feel guilty about that because I've invested what little time I had with the people, organisations, groups that were most important for whatever reason to me. So, 3 questions. Question number 1 is, what is the interest of the different groups that might be out there who could potentially benefit from my work? So I'm thinking imaginatively about all the different organisations, groups that might implicitly be interested in what I do. And what I'm looking for now is not just a list of everything that they do, but I want to know exactly how my interests intersect with theirs, and what aspect of this research project that I've got might be of particular relevance. It could be my method, it could be the theory, it could be one or another research finding if I get it. And that is my starting point and the most important question I have to ask myself. The second 2 questions are you can do either of these or both. So the first is, how influential are they? And specifically, I'm asking, what is their ability to influence my ability to achieve impact from this research? And this can work in 2 ways. It could be that they can potentially facilitate impact at scales and in ways that I could never do myself. So they may want to throw resource, staff time, money at me because actually my impact is their impact and vice versa. And the sooner I identify them, the more likely that I can co-develop this with them and give them some ownership, some buy-in to this. And now, great, they are working with me and we're doing things that we otherwise wouldn't have managed to do. The second of the ways that we can think about influence is as a blocking influence. So it may well be that there are organisations who hate what I'm doing. It could be ideologically opposed. It could be that this will compromise their interests. It could harm their interests. And I need to know about that. In some cases, this is a major block. And you know what, if this is going to harm your interests, then actually, do I even want to bother going down this line? Is there something I can do to prevent this from causing harm or damage, and to make this as beneficial as possible for as many people as possible? In some cases, it's an ideological thing, and well, okay, that's your perspective, and you can try and block me if you want, but now I know about your objections. This is how I might try and get around some of this and still achieve the impacts that I want for the groups that I want to help. It may be that they are a gatekeeper, that they have the power to shut this down. Without their permission, you don't get access to these people or data or resources or whatever, and all of a sudden you can go no further. You need to understand who those groups are. And finally, my last question is around benefit. So all of these groups that you think might be interested in your research, who is going to benefit most? And in some cases, actually, the groups that you end up prioritizing are groups that have marginal interest in what you're doing and very little influence. This is very often the case when it comes to publics. But who, if you could reach them, if you could make this interesting enough, would actually benefit way more than many other groups out there. And so your task is to work out how you do that. And these would typically then be what I would describe as hard to reach groups. So what are the groups that are going for that one organisation that can enable me to reach huge amounts of people at scale? Whether it's that I'm targeting that hard to reach group that for me ethically is the most important one to target. What are your top stakeholders, publics, that you're going to reach out to first? Identify them using my stakeholder publics analysis template. Here's what this looks like, and you can download this from the resources page on my website as an editable template. Try it out and come up with your top 3 and start sending some emails today and start that pathway to impact.
Right.
I'm afraid we're probably not going to have the time now to do the group exercise. But what I would ask you to do, if you take the sheets away, have a look through, see what you can fill in, and then if you're willing to like put in a bit of time with any of us, we're happy to sit with you and do that. And we're thinking perhaps we'll do a follow-up session on doing something specifically on helping people work out who their interested parties are.
And we don't have to dash off now, so if there's something that's sprung to mind that you want to discuss, then please do pick our brains. We'll stay behind for a few minutes.
So there's other resources. Now, these are some forms I've just found available on websites. We've got on our own research website and intranet, there's loads of resources and links. These aren't currently on there, but this is just an example of, if you really sort of think, I don't know where to begin with this, you can find all kinds of templates out there to just sort of literally, I don't want to keep using the word deconstruct, but it's sort of almost taking everything apart and starting from the beginning. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And working through this. So there's different templates out there available. There's like logic tables, sort of working it through in that way. And different templates and different formats will suit different people. We all think differently. We're all our research ideas are different. Our processing is different, and that should be celebrated. So not one particular template is going to speak to you or make you think, actually, yeah, I understand this and I know it. And it might take a while until something clicks, but by all means, like, see what's out there, see what's on our website, and then also look wider. So these are just some of the templates of this audience map is just another template that we've got on our website. So in terms of our resources,
so we've created a bank of resources. We use Professor Mark Reed's quite a lot because he puts it in such a succinct and relatable way. There's no point in us reinventing the wheel. So we've pulled some of those key resources that we think are useful. We've added on to those, and we've got those, like I say, on the internet and on the webpage. So these links are in there for when we send out the slides as well.
That's it. So I think in terms of today, that's kind of bringing today to a close, and we are conscious that we are not going to dash off. We know some of you will have things to do at 11, so hence why we've probably had to skip the sort of group exercise. But
there were just a couple of points as we were talking through that just, if there's a few takeaways from today, I think use the drop-ins, contact us, invite us to your team meetings, invite us to your planning, invite us to your research group meetings. We're always happy to help and be that support. It's really helpful for us to know what's going on across the place as well, because we'll have conversations and there might be interdisciplinary things that we can help connect with. So use us. I think when you think impact, think of our tiny little candle. If nothing else, think about that. Show the dissemination and the difference between impact. Keep that in your mind. Obviously, the 10-point plan, that's a quick, useful resource that we can use. And I like the way you said, be concise but precise. That rang a bell with me as well. So keep that in mind when you're doing your impact planning and your bid writing. Concise but precise. And use the tools and don't be intimidated. Just give us a shout. We're always here for some help.